Hi, I'm live. I've been around. I've been out in the deep woods. It's been raining, 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 and I had to drive quite a bit to get to the library. I haven't had money for gas, so I went through the cushions of my car and found enough spare change to get here. Plus, I have to go to the doctor's, and I don't really leave the woods unless I got a bunch of things to do. Because the woods is nice, even if it's raining and I have to stay under a tarp. So, anyway, so my car radio allowed me to listen to my satellite radio for 10 days. So I got to listen to I don't really get too much anything out there in the woods, but the satellite, where I put my car, right in line. So I've been listening to all kinds of, MSNBC, CNN, BBC, and I'm listening to it and realizing how everything is as it has always been, at least for the last 60,000 years. Now, when we look at biology, we kind of realize that everything is in a form of homeostasis, which is a balance. And that, when it comes to men and women, is very true. Men and women kind of need each other and are wired to like each other. But we are kept from that status of homeostasis by, this very small group of people who want it their way, not have it your way, their way. And everything about it is that way. The way how, the Serena Williams tennis thing. She's really an amazing athlete. Across any gender or race or she's just amazing. And a lot of people are jealous. She gets tested for drugs more than any other person. And you'd think after however many years they've been doing this, they'd figure out that she's just a phenomenon. And she is a role model for other women and young girls. And the girl who beat her, who is a Haitian Japanese descent, a woman of color, she's said that she became a tennis player because Serena Williams. And she was in the zone. So she won that game. The game would have been much more interesting if Serena hadn't been, racially and sexually harassed by not just the judge, but by the institution, going after her for what she wears, and where, there were plenty of people who, Riggs, and who's the guy who always got mad about things. The men, that woman who took off her shirt because it was unbelievably hot. She didn't expose herself. She just changed her shirt. Men do that all the time and bare their chest, but they don't get called out on it. And these are just symptoms. Just like Donald Trump. He is not the, the cause of what's going on. He's a symptom, and he was put there. We have to realize that since our founding fathers started this little experiment called representative republic democracy, it's always been lined up for the white, rich males to own and run, and that no matter how much the slice of the pie is given us, it's a crumb compared to what's going on. And since 9/11, yesterday was 9/11, and again, things happened to me synchronistically. 31 years ago, I was in an aircraft going over the Pacific, and I was in the toilet of the aircraft, which is just a bucket with blue water. And after I finished, I pushed the little button, and the swirl started going down the toilet. And we were in the northern hemisphere, so it was, the Coriolis effect, the water was going clockwise. But I just happened to be right there where we went from northern hemisphere to southern hemisphere. And the water was going this way, and then it slowed down and went the other way. And I was connected, like being plugged in to a space and time where I went to another dimension, where I met one of my great teachers, Akasha K. And it said, "Good to see you, Al. We've been watching over you, and we've been, kind of navigating you into a position. And how do you like being connected?" And that's when, the story of Buddha, Buddha standing by the road, and a traveler goes by him and sees Buddha like glowing. And the traveler, "Who are you, a god?" And Buddha goes, "No, I am awake." So if you go to my blogspot, my xratted.blogspot.com, you'll see the first 2/3 of a novel. I've written 26 novels. I've written 160 short stories. I've written about 800 essays. And my xratedblogspot.com is under the heading of Griot Publishing. I mean, I want it to be a publishing site. And this was something all three of my digital platforms, of my YouTube and my Blogspot and my Gmail, which is the Dude Awake Gmail. No, Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And my YouTube that you're watching me on right now, which is Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. So back to the aircraft. Akashic Ray has been a spiritual teacher of mine for my whole existence, but he came to my consciousness, and it wasn't like I was hearing voices. It was more like telepathy and a presence. And when I go into state, when I meditate, that presence is always there. And if you read my 2/3 of a novel, you will read about the day my second wife died. A woman who is, I can't even say, or I start to cry. But she is with me. And that was in 1987 when she died. But Akashic Ray was part of our life, because the first time we were intimate, I met her at a friend of mine did the Whole Life Expos, and I had a video company. I used to do industrials, so I was doing a video for him. And I was up it was the Penta Hotel in their big, gigantic mezzanine dining, whatever, But you can stiff about 30, it's like as big as a basketball arena. And it's got mezzanines. And so I was way up at the top, and I had my crews out and about with their cameras, and I had a walkie-talkie. Hey, go over there, talk to that person. Hey, go over to that person. And I had a pair of binoculars. And as I was scanning the crowd, this unbelievably gorgeous woman, dressed as Red Riding Hood, I can see her only through a pair of binoculars, but I'm up in the ceiling in the darkness. No one can see me, and she looks through up at me through my binoculars and and I get on my little walkie-talkie and I tell my crews, "Hey, go shoot whatever you want. I'm gonna go off radio," and I run down there and I start talking to her, and we talk for 16 hours until the janitors, "Hey, we're going to turn off the lights, get out." So we get out and we walk over the east side, and we walk down. There's a walkway that goes down the east side along the FDR Drive, and if you've ever seen Woody Allen's Manhattan, that's the view we were sharing. And we were very close, and we were holding hands and caressing, but nothing else, and talking about everything. We were making the most amazing connection. And I walk her all the way down to where Park Avenue and Lexington start at the Gramercy Park. She lived on Park Avenue down there. And I at her front door, and I go, "Well, look, the sun's coming up. Why don't we go into your place and have a cup of coffee?" And she reaches into her unbelievable, gorgeous pocketbook and pulls out a business card and hands it to me. And she says, "Call me later." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Yes, I'm usually free around 5 o'clock. Call me then." And my mouth was open, and she just walked in and closed the door behind me. Because when I asked for a cup of coffee, that was kind of like, "Hey, we're getting along so great. Let's get it on." And so I called her back, and we talked another 3 or 4 hours on the phone. And then for the next 30 days, I called her up every day at 5. And we talk and talk and talk. And I'd say, "Well, how about going out? What do you want to do? Can I come over for a cup of coffee?" And she said, "No, call me tomorrow." And I did that for 30 days. And on the 30th day, I was going to call her and say, I said to myself, "Well, if this girl doesn't at least have a cup of coffee with me, I'm moving on." And then the phone rings, and I say, "Hello?" And she goes, "Hi, this is me, and what are you up to now?" I said, "What do you want to do?" And she goes, "Why don't you come on over?" So I ran 40 blocks. I mean, ran all the way. And I clicked her buzzer. She buzzed me up. I went up the elevator. I went to her door. The door was, unlocked. I walked through, locked it behind me, and she had no lights on, and she had a path to her bedroom and a votive candles. And I went in, and she was ready for me, right? And we were intimate, and we went at it we went for hours until we were both satiated and spent. And it was about 1 in the morning, and she just went into a state. And I kind of looked at her and said, "Hey, honey, are you okay? Are you okay?" And she was. And then a male voice came out of her mouth, and that was Akasha K. Now, this was 20 years after my experience in the aircraft. And we were flying over my first wife, Donna Ann McAdams, the famous photographer. And the story of how we met on the subway and how she moved in, that's for another time. But we had about 10 great years. We traveled the world. We went to Australia and Asia and Europe, everywhere, Ireland. We went everywhere. And we had a photo studio called DNA, Donna and Albert. And so we were on this plane and we were heading for Sydney to see my good friend Neil Curtis, who is the Gary Trudeau of Australia. And Australia has had martial law a number of times because basically the Queen of England owns that country, that people, that chunk of rock. They're all her subjects. And she's gotten pissed off at him a number of times and declared martial law. Anyway, when that occurs, you can't say anything against the government. And, if you're a political cartoonist, it's tough. So Neil did a cartoon where all the politicians were Australian animals, koala bears and kangaroos and etc. And the only human in the whole cartoon was me, with a big beard and being me. And so when I got to Australia, everybody knew me. And everyone, oh, you're that guy in the cartoon on the newspaper. Oh, and either they wanted to beat me up or buy me a drink. And so we're flying to Australia, and I, I'm like really affected. What seems like a few moments to me has been like an hour or two in the bathroom. People complain. I don't know if you know, but they can get into the toilet. There's the little thing that says vacant and not vacant. You just lift it up, and there's a thing, and unlocks the door. And the stewardess walked in and looked at me just standing there and said, Sir, are you okay? And I said, huh? She goes, you okay? And and she walked me out and sat me down and got me a blanket and got me a drink. Because in Australia at that time, whiskey would fix anything. And I lie down, and I'm in state. And I am surrounded by fire and stars. And I talk to these black faces. And if you go to xratted.blogspot.com, you will read more definitively what happened. Anyway, so I'm in state, and I'm kind of snuggled up against my wife, and she kind of always, whenever we sat in an airplane like that, we lift up the thing between us, and she'd basically climb into my lap like a cat, because she was very feline. So sweet. Donna was the best. I haven't really seen her since we separated in 1980. So I followed her career, and she's done quite amazing things, as I always knew she would, because she was quite an amazing, and is an amazing person. So go look her up on not YouTube, Google her, Donna Ann McAdams. Anyway, she's in my lap, and when I was an apprentice electrician in Local 3, the IBEW, I was very intimate with the World Trade Center, because there was the World Trade Center was not built like any other building. It was built like a Tonka toy. It was built like an erector set. It was all the component parts were built in factories, trucked there and stuck together. And if they built it like they used to build buildings, they'd still be building it today. But so they did that. And one of the amazing things, each floor was an acre big. I mean, really, it's a big building. And it had no columns whatsoever. Thus, the thing that held the building up was the outside wall and the floor. And each floor was 4 foot thick with 10-inch rebar and aircraft cable that holds up suspended bridges and tons of pipe and everything else. And it was a pre-stressed concrete. So those floors were, and the weight of the building made it, everything coming down pressed it so the building was a rigidity like no other. It was built to take two 707s at the same time. So a 767, not so much. And you have to realize that an aircraft, a 767 that hit it, and a 757, or any commercial aircraft, is basically a thermos bottle with wings. It is not a strong thing. If you've ever seen any of NASA's films of how they crash them just to see how they crash, they just break apart. And you have to realize the outside wall of the World Trade Center were 20-inch by 20-inch steel casings, square, that once they were welded and riveted together, they put rebar and then poured concrete into them. These walls were indestructible, and an aircraft hitting it, the aircraft would have just hit it and not gone through. And then you have to realize that even if it did, it would be like, a fly going through a screen door. The door doesn't fall down, it just makes a little hole. And if, the fuel that burned was, JPL airplane fuel that burns at about 300 to 400 degrees. Steel melts at, 12 to 2,800 degrees. And those floors were 4 foot thick of concrete. Now, anyway, so this is 1977. I'm on an airplane. I'm in a state. My wife's in my lap. And I go from seeing fire and stars and black faces. And I mean, not, I'm an African American that's melanin challenged. Now, these were totally like a different thing. And they basically showed me 9/11. Because when I was in that bathroom, when we left LA, it was September 12th. And when we went from the northern hemisphere into the southern hemisphere, we went into September 11th. So I'm sitting in that seat about 77, 2001, you do the math, that many years before, and I'm seeing the World Trade Center collapse. And I start to cry. And I hear my teacher say, the world is different now. It has always been different, same as it ever was. But you, young Al, you will see, because your reality is just the tip of your nose. Everything from the tip of your nose out will be the truth that you'll be able to see, that no one else will see. Others who are awake like you will see, but they're few and far between. And as you age, more and more folk will wake up, and you will be there to help them. So, I'm watching that happen, and it's like a rewind. I go all the way back to my birth, where I was dragged out of my mother's uterus like a tick, and her umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, and the doctors were morons, and they were about to pop my head off. And this female doctor stepped out from the crowd and pushed the morons away and saved my mother's and my life. And from that moment on, women had been the more important examples of my life. My mother, who is like the epitome of will, and she could, she stopped smoking cigarettes like that, and wouldn't smoke for years, and then wanted to smoke, started smoking again, She died at 103. She wasn't going to die from cancer or alcohol, and when she drank, ooh, baby, she was a party girl. And my grandmother, she brought me up. She gave me all that I am. We walked the streets of New York City, going into museums and art galleries and libraries and bookstores. She was the person that took me into life. She's a little Italian lady, goes into the most sacred part of Wise's, which is where they get all the secret books and all the secret organizations, theology, and what's really going on. The gospel of Judas, the gospel of Jesus, the most important guys. Yes, his best friend, because that would not have happened. I mean, a whole bunch of things had to happen um, to because there were a lot of guys like Jesus out in the woods. The guy washing people's feet. Everyone thought he was the dude. But once Jesus showed up, he washed Jesus' feet and said, "You're the dude." My sound is cutting out. Well, the powers that be have been screwing with my phone and my ability to talk to you guys. That's why I keep inviting you to the woods. That's why I keep saying, "Hey, invite me to your house and let's get the band together." I keep talking about we have to bring this thing out as a movement, and not as me as the hero or as me as the guru. No, as us as a community. Because if we do not get a community, let's do it. Okay. You want to come up and visit? You living in America? Give me your phone number. I'll come to you. I have no money. I mean, zip. I live on 400 and something dollars a month. Could you guys do that? Gas, food, medicine, doctors, electric bill. Could you do that? Well, the universe takes care of me. I squeak by every month because I'm here. I'm alive. I should have died 5 years ago, but I'm here talking to you. Yes, I do. Okay. And everybody wants to get the band together. Contact me at thedudeawake42@gmail, and let's start a conversation. I talk to a lot of you guys on that, and I really appreciate that. So, let's see the story. So at that airplane flight is kind of when I woke up. I mean, I would always been awake. I've always been, as my mother would say, a handful. But women have been the most important thing to my life, and not in the eros sense, but in Plato's sense of the platonic love. And the platonic love leads to great eros. Without the platonic love, you can't, all you have is hormones. And as you get older, you don't have too many hormones like me. Not so much. But I still love people. It's just that, the hormones don't work. So that's okay in a lot of ways. It's, don't have to worry about that. I don't think about that. If it ever shows up, it's a pleasant little experience, but it's not the main drive. My main drive is to do what I was put here to do. Well, you can be awake. All you have to do is breathe 20%. Okay, kids. We're going to do a little wake-up call here, okay? Now sit in your chair, feet on the ground, nothing crossed, and you breathe in 20%. Then you breathe out 30%. Then you breathe in 20%. And you breathe out 30%. And by doing this conscious breath, it quiets the squirrel in your brain, keeps you from, oh, what am I going to do? How do I pay my bills? Oh, I got to do that. Oh, I got to do that. So everybody, breathe 20% in. More. And then 30% out. And then 30% out. Makes more space. What do you breathe in? And as you're breathing in the prana and chi of the universe. And that's what animates our little bag of water. We're just bags of water, Our little bag of water is just the avatar. Our soul is in our Akashic records, a server somewhere else, right? So, as we breathe that way, we're taking in the prana and chi. So, I want you, the audience, to breathe in 20% more. Focus your conscious mind, the squeaky wheel of the squirrel in your head. Focus that on your breath. By doing so, you are quieting that down. And you are illuminating yourself with that breath, prana and chi, bringing light into your body. The prana comes from heaven, and the chi is your ground. And you need that circle. That's what the the circle of life is about. That's what the symbol of the circle, the squiggly line. The circle is the event horizon of the universe. The squiggly line is the path for our life. One side is white, that's the illumination. The other side is the dark, because without shadow, we can't see anything. It'd just be white like a snowstorm. Then in the white, we have a dark black spot, and in the black, we have a white spot. That's chaos. We didn't have chaos. We'd be couch potatoes. And that's why Donald Trump, in a lot of ways, is good, because he is this total chaos. And he was put there by the powers that be. He ran against, if he ran against Bernie would have won. So he was put up against Hillary, and she stole California, or she didn't, the powers that be did. And, everything is manipulated. Everything's a show. It's just like the Wizard of Oz. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. So breathe deeply and go into state. And you will see, close your eyes, and by breathing in, the prana will illuminate your imaginary mirror. That's your eyelids. That's where you have dreams. That's where dreams are. That's why we have rapid eye movement, because your eyes are flitting back and forth as if you're living in another dimension, which you are. Any specific, alleged scientific or alleged religious or alleged theologic or alleged anytime, the one thing I do know is I know nothing, And when you think you know what's going on, kids, that's when you're heading for trouble. You need to stay on the path, that squiggly line. I wish I could. When I get older, all the thoughts get jumbled in my mind. Anyway, so we're in the airplane, and I'm being given the 411 of, hey, buddy, you're waking up here. We sent you to Australia, not to see your friend, but to wake you up, to put you on this airplane. Why do you think you're sitting in the last seat of the airplane, right next to the blue, stinky tank? You barely have a window to look out, and you're squeezed back here. And everything you go through from this point on, that's, you're safe 1 inch from your nose, but everything else is like, wake up, same as it ever was. Anyway, so I kind of go back all the way to my birth and go through all the things that were important to me, all my great teachers. And yes, I had some great men teachers, but the teachers that made a difference to me were women, and not because they were teachers. It was by they showed me through their example of their life. So my mom was a great example, but she was like a star burning. Couldn't get close to her, and you didn't want to go back to one of the stories where I'll kill you. That's mine. So didn't get too close to my mom. I mean, of all her children, I was the closest, because I appreciated her for who she was, and didn't feel bad about how she treated me, because as I could negotiate, she was the person who really taught me how to navigate the powers that be, because she was the power that be. In our family, she was the admiral of the Navy, and my dad was just the captain of the ship, and he was Italian, and so he screamed and yelled and jumped up and down, just like Donald Trump, kind of a distraction, so my mom could do whatever the heck she wants, just like the powers that be are, they are deconstructing our country. They're taking everything away that had any essence of being good. Again, I said, this country was started by white rich men to get over, right? But it just happened. They did it during this Enlightenment period, and the guys who wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and everything that our country was founded on were truly amazing. And they had this period of you know of eloquence and genius and being awake, and then they fell asleep. War of 1812, Madison, he wrote our Constitution, genius, but running our government, not so much. Hamilton wanted to, put a foundation of our country on debt. So Donnie wants to get rid of debt. No, our country has always been based on debt, because without debt, you can't pay back. Without paying back, there wouldn't be an economy without debt. So, I've had a lot of men who are my teachers, but most of my guides and mentors were women. So, everyone that I was involved with, my 2 wives, all the women that I was intimate with, they were all greater than me. And my greatest gift was shining a light on how great they were and doing things with them in co-creation. Every woman I've ever been involved with, I've co-created, made something better than what we were individually, So, the audience is waning, and this was only supposed to be a short little thing of saying, hey, I'm heading back to the school in John Birmingham, and John, again, is begging me to go on his channel and do something. And I am, but I'm going to be real specific with John Boy, instead of letting him take advantage of me, which he could never do, but, throwing me out 26 times. But again, I let him do that because it led me. It's like when I embraced the universe. Okay, one last little story. It's 37 minutes. See if I can do this before we hit 40 minutes. So, this is a great story. So my grandma turns to be 100, and it's during the Vietnam War, and I'm in Maryland near College Park, and I'm involved with the anti-war movement, and I had kind of come back from my travels, from being in Duke and working for DARPA and other, I just kind of stumbled into esoteric technology. And I came back to my friends who are artists and anti-war movement people. I said, listen, guys, the war is just a symptom. We have to go after what's more, this is a spiritual problem, right? And a technical problem. I mean, nuclear weapons, that's a bad day. And, racial and gender inequality, that's the death of our species, So I was involved with these guys because they were the most organized guys, and I lived in this house of about 7 guys and about 8 women, and the women stayed in our house as long as they could stand it, because we were just a bunch of guys who were guys are just morons first, and nasty animals. They throw their socks everywhere. They don't put the toilet seat down. They leave dishes in the kitchen. Anyway, so these girls were trying, sort of, well, these guys are great, and if I'll be the woman behind. No, so they could only stand us for so long. One person said, a lot of people have said to me that I was an acquired taste. Anyway, so I'm living in this place, and I'm not the leader. I'm just, my friends were there from UNC and from UMass and a few other places, Berkeley. And so I kind of went there, and I had a young girlfriend, and we would go to the University of Maryland at College Park, and big highway ran right through the campus. and we would block off one lane of the highway, and the cops would come at us and tear gas us, and we'd go down the hill to the other lane where the air would be clean, and the cops had to stay up there and get the traffic moving, and we would block that one, and we just went back and forth like a tennis game. And so it was, and it was a game, you know. It was no big deal, and so my grandma's 100th birthday occurs, and my brother says, "Hey, you didn't make it for the birthday party." I said, "No one told me," and he said, "Well, it was grandma's 100th birthday. It was kind of fun. She kind of told everybody off and blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Oh." So I called her up and said, "Hey, Grandma, how you doing?" She goes, "Oh, hey, how you doing there down against the war?" And I said, "Well, it's going." And so she goes, "Well, I told everyone that I didn't like them and that I was going to I bought myself a Greyhound bus thing that lets me get on a Greyhound bus anywhere in America, and it only cost me $100, and I'm going to go around the country and see things and visit people, and I'm going to come home and die." I said, "Oh, that's great. So you're going to come see me?" She goes, "Oh, yeah, where are you?" I gave her the address. I said, "Okay." Anyway, weeks went by, and I, forgot about that. She didn't say she was coming at a certain date, but it was, I don't know, some day during the week, weeks later, and I'm in bed. And because we weren't working, we didn't have to get up, we didn't have to do, we would do events. And I'm in bed with this young lady, and we're both, in our birthday suits, and covers over us. And this was an abandoned building, and had no doors. We had, like, curtains over the doorway. And this a buddy of mine kind of pops his head in and says, he doesn't go, "Excuse me," or anything. I mean, we could have been in the moment, but we weren't. We were just kind of, in each other's arms, because I'm more a cuddly guy than, in the moment. The moment happens, but I'm more about cuddling and talking and sharing and being intimate. I still am. Anyway, so he goes, "There's an old lady out front, and she says she's your grandma." And I go, "Oh, yeah." So I kind of, throw on a shirt and a pair of pants and run out to her, and there's Grandma. And she's got 2 shopping bags full of food. And she goes, "Oh, Albert." And she puts them down. He comes over and gives me a big hug. She goes, "Oh, that's a nice house." And, I don't know whether she's kidding or because it's an abandoned house. And so, there's like a bunch of cars in disarray out front. And it's not the best neighborhood. She walked the whole way, I said, "How'd you get the bus?" She goes, "Oh, I walked. I went to the supermarket. I got some food and I walked." I said, "Oh, okay." So I go, "I'll be out." She goes, "Oh, no, you go back to what you're doing." Like she knew that I was, Anyway, so I go back there, and I get a little more cleaned up, and I go out, and Grandma's in the kitchen, and she's cleaning the kitchen, and the girls have left all the guys, and they are around Grandma like she is it. And my favorite, eggplant parmesan. Well, within 3 days, that house is cleaner than an operating room. And everyone, the girls are wearing dresses, and the boys are wearing, pants and white shirts and ties. And Grandma did not ask us to do any of this. She was just the example. We followed her example. And so she stayed about 2 weeks. She went with us to a couple of these rallies and said, "This is a joke, Back in the day, when I was involved in the union movement before World War I, this is how we organized." Anyway, so she gave us a class in anarchy, socialism, and, union organizing. And then we took her down to the, he says, "No, let's walk." So we all walked, like, 12 of us walked to the bus station and put Grandma on the bus to her next stop. And then we reorganized ourselves, because I don't know if you guys ever saw Forrest Gump, and he gets the Medal of Honor and he goes looking for his girlfriend, and she's hanging out with, some jerk, wearing parts of a uniform and screaming at people, and it's the movement. I mean, but that's how it was. And that was one of the good things about the movie Forrest Gump, is that, you know, um, each little vignette was kind of how it was. I like how my cap in my head makes me look like a cone head. So, Yes, Darvark. Anyway, so what we did was we cleaned up the neighborhood, and we just, because before Grandma left, her exposure went to the neighborhood, and we started making meals in the backyard for everybody. And by the time she left, our whole neighborhood had changed from being, drunk and drugged and a cesspool to being a neighborhood. And we moved that out into D.C. And the thing that was the head of that, what Grandma did, and why all those people came to eat at our house, was that she went out in the neighborhood and found the other grandmas and brought them back. So after Grandma left, we had an organizational structure of grandmas. And pretty much every political, social movement that I've been involved ever since, I've always went out looking for the grandmas. And what are grandmas but people who are the grown-ups in the room? And you don't have to be a female to be a grandma. You can be a guy. I know a lot of guys who were grandmas back in the day. Anyway, so our movement was kind of an offshoot from the anti-war movement. And there were a lot of grandmas who quilted. And what we did, we decided to take what we were doing in the backyard and move it down to the Pentagon. And we weren't going to have signs and screaming and yelling. We would have food, and we would make quilts. And we went down there, and there was a park that we could be in, basically legally, because it was a run by the National Forest Service. So, you can camp in the National Forest. We didn't camp, we just went there. We had an encampment. We always had somebody there. But within 3 or 4 months, we had made a quilt rope that we circled the whole Pentagon with, and a bunch of Lakota grandmas and Apache grandmas and Hopi grandmas showed up and started doing ceremony. And we levitated the Pentagon. And about a year after that, Richard Nixon resigned and the war ended. And I'm not going to say that, are making, because all the people in the Pentagon, I mean, we weren't making a peep, we were just doing our thing around the Pentagon. And they all came, once we started doing ceremony and we encircled the Pentagon with this quilt rope, and we were making food for anybody who wanted it. And these guys would come out and, wow, this food's great, much better than that plastic sandwich in the cafeteria. So we had a lot of support from inside the Pentagon, and the police never bothered us. No official came to bother us. Lots of officials came and broke bread with us and told, listened to our grandma's stories. But anyway, I'm going to go on about it. I'm now at 49 minutes. At 50, I'm going to say, I love you, and I look forward to you next week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, John and I probably do some live chats, and it'll be interesting. And I'm going to be really, really specific about things. And again, John is going to be the canary in the coal mine. See how he reacts. Yeah. Okay, buds. I love you all, and have a beautiful day. And watch out for that hurricane if you're in its way, right? Okay. And it's almost 60 minutes. Bing, 50 minutes.